In this review, I will outline the plot of the Mandalorian Season 3 episodes and then review them. The episode starts in a Mandalorian base, and the armourer is making a helmet for an initiate. Outside, there is an initiation ceremony for a Mandalorian youngling, where the armourer is presenting the initiate with his helmet, who in turn swears an oath and is being baptized. The ceremony is interrupted by a sea monster who attacks them, and the Mandalorians fire on it. Those Mandalorians who have jetpacks initially don't use them, but when they do, they take off to try and get a vantage point to fire on the creature. They then land on the creature to lay charges, but this doesn't work. They then use grappling hooks, which also doesn't work. The armourer rushes up and rescues a wounded Mandalorian and is knocked aside. Then Mando flies in with a fighter that looks like the one from the Phantom Menace and fires on the creature, who perishes. Mando is with Baby Yoda. The armourer chastises Mando for taking off his helmet willingly, and that he is no longer a Mandalorian. They talk of redemption and the pools of Mandalore, thought to have been destroyed in the Purge of Mandalore. Mando produces a relic he got from Jawas. Mando plans to go to Mandalore to bring proof he has bathed in the pools of Mandalore, and by the creed he be Mandalorian again, and be allowed back into the fold. He sets off to do this. Mando and Baby Yoda in hyperspace, where Baby Yoda sees space whales. This is actually a bit of a long scene. Mando goes to Navarro to meet Greef. Mando and Baby Yoda take a long stroll through the marketplace. There is a statue of IG-11 made from some of his parts in the square. They meet Greef, who has two little droids carrying his cape. He explains that they have big building projects and mining in the asteroid belt, and he wants to set Mando up on a ranch near some hot springs to farm. While in the office, Baby Yoda spins in his chair and Force grabs a sweet. Mando explains he completed his quest and Baby Yoda has returned to him, and he needs to redeem himself in the eyes of the other Mandalorians. They are interrupted, and Greef has to go and deal with some pirates, who insist that the school is actually a bar and they want a drink. It drags out for a little bit and there's a Western-style standoff, but Greef shoots a gun out of the lead pirate's hand, and he and Mando get the other four pirates when they draw their guns. Greef needs a new marshal, and Kara has been recruited by Republic Special Forces after bringing in Moff Gideon, who is to be brought in front of a special tribunal. Greef does not want the Republic, and he doesn't know Mando was there on business despite their chat earlier in the episode. Mando wants IG-11 back, and the statue has some of his parts, which Mando tries to rebuild into IG-11, which goes wrong when he is reset to factory settings and he tries to terminate Baby Yoda. Mando tosses Baby Yoda to Greef and then shoots IG-11. Droid smiths on Navarro are given IG-11 to repair. They look like the worms from the Men in Black. Greef awkwardly translates for them, while on all fours outside the workshop, even though Mando can understand them. They need a memory circuit, and if Mando can get one, then IG-11 can be repaired. Baby Yoda thinks these aliens are pets and tries to pick one up. Mando goes off in search of a memory circuit and shows Baby Yoda how to navigate the spacecraft. The lead pirate from earlier shows up, and with some of his mates in their fighters. There is a lengthy dogfight in the asteroid belt, then the pirate battleship is waiting for them at the edge of the belt. The Pirate King has vegetation growing from his face, then Mando hyperspaces away. Mando goes to Kalevala in the Mandalorian system and goes to a castle to meet Bo-Katan. They go down a long hallway to meet her. He is there to join her. Her forces have melted away when she returned without the Darksaber. The fleet is making their way as mercenaries. Mando still has the Darksaber, and she has given up and accuses his cult of abandoning Mandalore. Where were they when Mandalore fell? A fractured Mandalore led to its fall. The pools provided Beskar, and the rest is myth, and the planet is ravaged, plundered and poisoned. Mando reminds her of what she said, that the curse is wrong, and to make up her mind. She tells him where the mines are and that he will find out whether the planet is poisoned or not. Mando then leaves. The intro to the episode recaps with the armourer telling Mando that Bo-Katan claimed to rule Mandalore by blood, but lost her way, which ended in tragedy. On Tatooine, the mechanic is making a sail to repair a Rodian speeder, which it turns out she helped break in the first place, because after the Rodian left, she calls in the Jawas with the speeder's missing parts. She did this in order to get the job, and she sends the Jawas out to do it again. Mando then lands to meet her. Baby Yoda flips into her arms and makes noises to her. Mando needs the IG-11 parts, and she speaks to the Jawas in their language, but she can't get them, so she starts selling an astro droid instead. He needs a droid to test the atmosphere and would prefer a fixed IG-11, but she continues to sell the old astro droid, which is falling apart and not the parts that Mando needs. Mando takes the astro droid and heads to Mandalore. When they reach there is a little exposition about tracing ancestry back through Beskar armor, and Mando grew up on the moon orbiting Mandalore, and he has never actually been to Mandalore itself. He also points out which planet Bo-Katan is on in the system from the previous episode. The landing is rough. Communication is out due to magnetic interference, so they are cut off from the galaxy outside, but the ship's scanners still work because when they land, they can trace the droid. Mando sends the droid out to test the atmosphere and take samples, but if the scanners still work on the ship, he could have used them to scan for the atmosphere, making the droid arc redundant. It would have made more sense if the scanners were also not working, due to the same interference blocking communications. Mando uses the scanners to track the droid. There is a little static. Baby Yoda is worried, and Mando goes after him once he has sealed his helmet, and Baby Yoda is sealed in the cockpit. Mando goes to the sublevel and is attacked. He has difficulty using the dark saber and uses other means to defeat the aliens. Mando finds the droid knocked over and takes the droid back to the ship. So far the plot has achieved nothing and wasted time going back and forth in and out of the cave and trying to get parts that for IG-11 which he didn't get. Mando discovers that there is no toxicity in the atmosphere and it is breathable, acknowledging Bo-Katan was right. Mandalore is not cursed. Mando and Baby Yoda go back to the cave and go to the Civic Center. It's a long trip. They find remains of a Mandalorian helmet. Then Mando is surprised and captured by an old droid which seems to be controlled by an organic/mechanical hybrid who takes Mando back to his lair. Baby Yoda lingers then follows to see where Mando has been taken. He spies on the alien and tries to use the Force to free Mando but can't. So much for his training. From what I understand, Baby Yoda trained with Luke for 2 years before returning to Mando in the Book of Boba Fett. Baby Yoda is discovered and Mando tells him to go get Bo-Katan, so Baby Yoda races back to the fighter and along the way is ambushed by the aliens whom Mando fought earlier. Baby Yoda uses the Force against them well, pushing one of them out of the cave forcefully, so why couldn't he use the Force sooner to help Mando more effectively? But the plot has to happen. Baby Yoda and the droid go back to Bo-Katan's castle in the ship. She is reluctant and wants rid of Mando once and for all. She sees Baby Yoda and asks what happened. He can't respond, so she downloads the Astromech's data banks, then takes off in her ship to rescue Mando, with Baby Yoda and the droid. There is another rough entry. She seems pleased when entering Mandalore's atmosphere, but not when she sees the ruins. Baby Yoda guides her to Mando, with the Astromech keeping an eye on them through the camera on the ship. Baby Yoda and Bo-Katan go through the cave and the ruins. The CGI on the way down doesn't look as good as before. Baby Yoda is reluctant to proceed, but Bo-Katan needs him to guide her to Mando. More moving through the tunnels, and she mentions she doesn't know what he was told about the Jedi, but there was a time when they got on quite well, fought side by side. She asks how good he is with the Force. Bo-Katan sees something, then shoots the ceiling, which collapses, revealing some of the aliens from earlier. They fight and she wins. It is revealed that they are carnivorous and once lived on the wastelands on Mandalore. If they survived, what else has? Mando is being drained of his blood by the alien, and Bo-Katan comes in and fights the creature with the dark saber. She defeats the creature temporarily. She tries to get Mando out of the cage he is in. The creature then goes into his droid and attacks her again, and she wins again. Mando then awakens around a campfire, and they talk about Mandalore and how it isn't cursed, but that there is nothing left, and Bo-Katan is very mournful. She gives him some hog soup, which all Mandalorians have had since they were initiates, but Mando hasn't had any before. Mando must go to the mines to redeem himself, but she says it's nothing special about the water, and that he states without creed, what are they? She guides him there, and on the way, Mando and Bo-Katan reminisce about the ruins of Mandalore. She is mournful that with the clans fighting each other, they couldn't resist the Empire. She is scornful of the beliefs and practices of old. She talks fondly of her father, a great man who perished defending Mandalore, to which Mando emotionally states this is the way. They arrive at the mines, and she reads a plaque on the wall that the waters of Mandalore lives a mythical beast that Mandalore the Great once tamed. Mando goes into the water and recites a verse, and then is dragged under. Bo-Katan dives in, going to the bottom where Mando is unconscious, and she saves him again, dragging him to the surface, but she sees the beast on the way up. The episode starts with the last one left off. Mando is unconscious. Bo-Katan is looking at the pool, contemplating what she saw. Mando wakes up and there is a slight hesitation. He is now redeemed and Bo-Katan witnessed it, but she does not mention the creature. Mando takes some water. Bo-Katan asks Mando whether he saw anything. He only saw the chasm as he fell and didn't know it was that deep. Bo-Katan states it wasn't until the bombing made it deeper. She is keeping the knowledge of the creature to herself. She looks back at the pool again, then they leave in her ship. They are then attacked by Imperial fighters. Mando gets to the AA gun to fight them off. She has been fighting Imperial warlords and taking their ships, so they aren't very happy with her. Mando is dropped off outside Bo-Katan's castle to get his fighter, to try and even the odds. Between them, they destroy the fighters, but 3 more fighter bombers show up and bomb Bo-Katan's castle, making her very angry. She pursues, destroying one of them, but many more show up and they have to flee in hyperspace to where Mando's clan is, and Bo-Katan is very reluctant to go there. Then they cut to Coruscant Opera House, where Dr. Pershing, now a Republic scientist, is giving a speech in the Opera House. Then Moff Gideon's communication officer from the last season shows up and sits down to listen to the speech. Dr. Pershing gives a story about his mother and the lack of cloning that could have saved her life, encouraging him to go into cloning research. Brief after-event talking, and he is taken back to his apartment by a droid-piloted taxi. He meets others in the amnesty program, including the officer from Gideon's ship. They toast the New Republic. The officer offers Pershing a tour of Coruscant, and the group talk about what happened to Moff Gideon, the little things about the Empire they miss, including travel biscuits. Pershing goes back to his flat. Later there is a knock on his door, but there is no one there, but there is a package of biscuits at the door. At the office where Dr. Pershing works, he talks to a co-worker, then later he and the officer are seeing the sights. Some small talk. She went to the academy on Coruscant, and she thinks some good came from the Empire, and also his research and how it could help. He wishes that the New Republic would continue his research, and she encourages him. He goes and almost touches a monument but gets caught. It's almost like a first date between the two, and then they both leave together. Then to Dr. Pershing's counselling session, and at the end he is asked whether he could continue in research in private, but is forbidden, and he is upset by this. He meets with the officer and talks about his research and its importance. It is suggested that he could be done without Republic knowledge, with a mobile research station. She can help him, but he gets cold feet and he pulls out. Back at Dr. Pershing's workplace, he has another conversation with a bureaucratic co-worker. The Republic is destroying Imperial data, research and technology, which could be useful, but that discussion is closed down. There is another counselling session and he is disillusioned. He goes and talks to the officer about restarting his research and thinks it is the right thing to do. At the train station and terminal, he is nervous and draws a bit of attention to himself. They are going to an old Imperial shipyard, where old Imperial ships are being decommissioned. They can get the research station from there. They board a train, and after a short time, droid ticket officials come, and they go to the next carriage. The droids follow them, so they go to the last carriage and the droids follow them again. They then jump off the carriage and arrive at the Imperial shipyard, where they enter an Imperial Star Destroyer being decommissioned. They search the ship, and she apologizes for not introducing herself before and gives her name as Ella Kane. They then go to a room which has what Dr. Pershing needs, and they take it. Hearing a noise, she keeps watch as he continues to collect the equipment. They leave and they hear the sound again. They run down a corridor, then outside. They prepare to leave the Star Destroyer. A bright light shines on them, and they are surrounded by Amnesty security, who put them under arrest. She picks up the equipment and nods to the officer and leaves. Dr. Pershing is captured. Kane is under the guise of a reformed Imperial and Amnesty officer, and is applauded for helping them catch Pershing, who is going to have his mind wiped. He tries to explain who Kane is, and she sets him up, but the Mon Calamari during the procedure won't listen, and talks about Imperial indoctrination. Kane asks to wipe Pershing's memory herself under the guise of a friend, but she coldly looks on as she adjusts the settings higher, which fries his mind. Then they cut to Mando and Bo-Katan, and they are landing to meet Mando's clan. They live by the old ways. Mando advises Bo to keep her helmet on. Upon landing, they are met by other Mandalorians. They are confronted by Paz Vizsla, who calls Mando an apostate and tries to turn him away because he is no longer Mandalorian. Mando explains he has been to the pools of Mandalore, and by right he is Mandalorian, but Paz doesn't believe him, because the bombing has destroyed the planet, which is cursed. The other Mandalorians are also skeptical and believe the planet is cursed as well, but as we know it isn't. Bo-Katan stands witness, but Paz rebuffs her, stating her clan has fallen, that she has lost her way and is apostate herself. They both have bathed in the holy waters, and Mando has proof, but the other Mandalorians are reluctant to believe him. They are taken to the armourer, where Mando presents the vial of water as proof, and Bo-Katan confirms as witness. The armourer pours the water into her water, showing it to be the water of Mandalore, and asserts Mando is redeemed, and so is Bo-Katan, and she is accepted into Mando's clan. The episode starts over a wide empty plain, then cuts to Mandalorians training. Bo-Katan walks among them as they train. Baby Yoda is sitting and lifting stones with the Force. Mando walks over, saying he has to train with other foundlings, and he takes him and puts him down to compete with another foundling. Bo-Katan straps a dart gun onto Baby Yoda's wrists, with words that Mando is like her own father, and Mando is very proud of him. The other foundling fires 2 darts at Baby Yoda's and hits him both times. Then, after encouragement from Mando, Baby Yoda flips overhead twice, then fires 3 times at the other foundling, hitting him and scoring 3 hits and winning the test. Then a raptor swoops down and picks up the foundling from the first episode. The other Mandalorians give chase with their jetpacks, which then fail. Bo-Katan follows the creature to its lair in her ship. Back at base, Bo-Katan tells the Mandalorian she knows where the lair is, and to form a rescue party on that ship. She repeats she knows where the lair is, and she has scouted the area. Mando, Bo-Katan, the armourer, and Paz Vizsla come up with a plan. Take the craft, land to proceed on foot to the base of the mountain, and then climb up to avoid disturbing the creature. Baby Yoda stays with the armourer, who describes the forge as a centre of Mandalorian culture, and she makes some armour for Baby Yoda. During the making of the armour, Baby Yoda looks scared, and he has a flashback of Order 66. Jedis are being cut down, trying to protect him from stormtroopers. Baby Yoda is put into an elevator and is met by Jedi Master Kelleran Beck, played by Ahmed Best, who will protect him. They are attacked by stormtroopers, which initially Beck deals with, but more stormtroopers start to arrive. Beck and Baby Yoda take off in a speeder, and they are pursued by 2 dropships. There is a chase scene where Beck gets a lead. Then they land on a landing pad where there are Naboo security officers who are friends of Beck, but the stormtroopers land and his friends sacrifice themselves so Beck and Baby Yoda can escape. They go onto the ship and take off. They are pursued briefly by TIE fighters, and then the flashback then ends. Back at the forge, Baby Yoda's armour has been made and is placed on him. The episode then cuts to Bo-Katan's ship landing. The rescue party disembarks and proceeds on foot to the base of the mountain, where they make camp to climb the next day. They eat, but they have to go to a quiet place where no one can see them taking off their helmet, so they can eat. Because Bo-Katan is leader, she stays at camp. The next day they begin to climb, which takes a while. The nest looks empty, but you do see a helmet. The raptor has taken Mandalorians previously. The foundling is Paz's son. Then baby raptors burst up. Then the big raptor comes and coughs up the foundling, then picks him up with its claws and then flies off. The Mandalorians pursue with their jetpacks, and in the pursuit some of the Mandalorians launch their lariats around the creature's wing. Mando catches up and rescues the foundling. The raptor falls into the lake and is eaten by a larger creature. The Mandalorians are brought back in Bo-Katan's ship, and the baby raptors are brought back as foundlings. Bo-Katan's armour is damaged, and she requests 2 signets, 1 Night Owl and 1 Mythosaur. Bo-Katan tells the armourer of the Mythosaur in the waters of Mandalore, but the armourer does not believe her. Mando explains to Paz Vizsla how he got the Darksaber from Moff Gideon. Gideon, who was sent off to the New Republic for interrogation and justice. Paz disagrees and thinks that Moff Gideon should have been executed for the atrocities that he committed. On Navarro, there's town planning with Grief. Sounds from outside and the pirate corsair is flying overhead. Grief is against buying them off because it sets a bad precedent. The chief pirate with moss on his face from earlier in episode 1 is on the screen. Tough talk from both of them. They are trying to bluff one another, but the pirate has the corsair ship and it fires upon the town. Grief sends a message asking for help to the New Republic and helps get the townspeople to safety. The episode then cuts to the New Republic airbase. The pilots are relaxing. Carson Teva, the pilot captain from Season 2, gets a message from Grief and he wants to forward this on to Coruscant, but he is reminded that they take weeks to respond, so he decides to go himself. And why not go straight to Navarro with a squadron or directly to the Mandalorians as he would later do in the episode. We see Moff Gideon's comm officer, Ella Kane, and the Republic officers on Coruscant. Carson goes in to meet the official, but he notices Ella Kane on the way in, and he asks the official for permission to go and help Navarro. The official is vaguely sympathetic in helping. Kane then enters, and when asked by the official about Navarro, she says that they have not signed the charter, which makes the official backtrack in helping. Carson makes his case, and he notices Kane is a former Imperial with the amnesty program. The official says no and refuses permission in helping Navarro, bureaucracy at its finest. Carson is critical of Kane as a former Imperial, which the official thinks harsh. Carson then leaves. This sequence has achieved absolutely nothing, as it's a simple padding for the episode. Grief has led the citizens to safety and he looks mournfully back at the town. Carson then goes to meet the Mandalorians and asks them for help in helping Grief. Mando speaks to the other Mandalorians, and because Mando was offered land, he suggests that the other Mandalorians could be offered land as well and settle there. Paz then speaks about fighting Grief, then the Imperials, and to everyone's surprise, he supports Mando in helping Grief. Bo-Katan will drop the Mandalorians off, and to allow this to happen unharmed, Mando in his craft will distract the Corsair. Cut to the town square, and the pirates have made a mess of the place. You then see Mando's craft fire on the pirate ship, and their cannons are disabled, so they launch fighters to pursue Mando. This allows Bo-Katan to drop off the Mandalorians so they can fight the pirate. You see the worm aliens from episode 1. Bo-Katan then makes a run at the pirate Corsair, and the pirate chief orders the fighters pursuing Mando to return to defend the ship. The pirates lay a trap for the Mandalorians in an alleyway, but Paz comes in and he basically guns them down, making very short work of them. But the other pirates have set up a cannon in a high building which has the Mandalorians pinned down. Bo-Katan attacks the Corsair, the fighters pursue, but then Mando comes in and he attacks the Corsair and some of the fighters. The armourer takes out the pirates with the cannon, and the other Mandalorians finish off many pirates, and the remainder retreat, but they are surrounded by the Navarro citizens and the Mandalorians. Those remaining pirates are then forced to surrender. The pirate pilot who got into the fight with Grief and Mando in episode 1 flees. The pirate Corsair starts firing on the town people, but its last engine is destroyed, and the ship crashes with the pirate king on board. Grief makes a speech. He then cedes land to the Mandalorians. Paz takes Bo-Katan to speak to the armourer at the old forge. The armourer asks Bo to remove her helmet. The Mandalorians have strayed from the path, or the way, and they must walk it together. The armourer now believes Bo about seeing the mythosaur, despite not believing her in an earlier episode and having no proof, but she appoints Bo leader and start of a new beginning for the Mandalorians. They then go to meet the other Mandalorians. The armourer explains that Bo-Katan is off to recruit other Mandalorians and is able to walk both paths. It is time to retake Mandalore. Cut to Carson. He comes across a crippled former Imperial craft. He calls it in, but the records are classified. He launches a probe. It is a New Republic prison ship, and it was transporting Moff Gideon. Carson had suspected that he had escaped. There are no survivors, and Moff Gideon is not among the remains. There is Beskar embedded in the wall of the ship. Did Mandalorians rescue him? We will find out later in the series. The episode starts on a Quarian spacecraft. One Quarian brings the captain, who is in a water tank, a fish to eat. They are then intercepted by an Imperial warship, and the tank the captain is drained and is put away. The captain hails the Imperials, offering tribute, but they are not Imperials, but Mandalorians instead. The lead Mandalorian, Axe Wolves, who was in Season 2, Episode 3 with Bo-Katan, he tells a Quarian that they are hired by the Mon Calamari because the Quarian captain has absconded with the Mon Calamari prince, because they're in love. The Mandalorians are tasked with bringing him back. The prince runs onto the bridge, and he doesn't want to go, but the Quarian captain has little choice and sends him back. Bo-Katan and Mando go to a planet where the Mandalorian fleet is. The fleet is being led by Axe Wolves. They speculate that the Mandalorians are there because they are hired protection. Mando and Bo-Katan want them to join them in retaking Mandalore. They are contacted by a port official who takes control of the ship electronically and directs them to a landing pad. The group exit the ship and are greeted by 2 Imperial droids who direct them to meet the rulers of the planet, although they don't want to go there, but they are taken there anyway, and they enter an automated pod. They apparently need permission before going to meet the Mandalorians. Bo is uncertain on how to proceed with the Mandalorians at this time. The rulers are having a feast. Jack Black's character, Captain Bombardier, was an Imperial sent there under the amnesty program to help rebuild the planet. The ruler, imaginatively called the Duchess, married him. The Duchess wants Baby Yoda to come to her, and he flips over to her. They hired the Mandalorians because they were forbidden to have a military due to Bombardier being an ex-Imperial, and the Mandalorians are forbidden from entering the city because a standing army cannot do so, and constables are forbidden from carrying firearms. They are having problems with the droids. Like the earlier Season 2 episodes, if you help me, I'll help you. They cannot use the Mandalorians, so they need Bo-Katan and Mando to solve the problem. Bombardier also offers a petition in New Republic to recognize Mandalore. They agree to help. They are taken to the command center and meet Commissioner Hellgate, who shows them the problem with the security footage of malfunctioning droids. The droids are reprogrammed ex-Imperial or Separatist droids. They can't shut down the droids because the droids do all the work, so the people don't have to. Seems familiar to modern day with automation, Alexa or automated cleaning robots. But that's a sideshow there. Bo and Mando are directed to meet the Ugnaughts about repairing the droids, but initially they don't respond, so Mando invokes Krill, and they listen. The scene goes on for a bit too long. The Ugnaughts don't think there is a problem with the droids. Mando reassures them that it is not down to the Ugnaughts' work on them, and in the end they give Mando a disc with the names of the droids they need to speak to. They also think the next malfunction will be at the loading docks. Mando and Bo travel to the loading docks in search of malfunctioning droids, while Bo talks to the foreman, and as a test, Mando starts kicking the droids to see if there are any reaction, which does provoke a malfunction in one of them, who then hits Mando and knocks the foreman and Bo down. Mando and Bo give chase, a rather long chase scene, but in the end Mando is able to knock the droid down and Bo shoots the droid. They find a tag with an address on the droid, and it is a droid's only bar. Bo wants Mando to let her do the talking and argue a little of who has the right way of dealing with things. It is a bit awkward when Mando and Bo enter. They question the bar droid, good cop Bo, bad cop Mando. The bar droid and the other droids want to help because they don't want to be replaced by humans, and that being on the planet has given them a second chance. The droids drink Nepenthe, which protects against mechanical wear and delivers subparticles that refreshes their program. The droids that are malfunctioning have been given bad and corrupted Nepenthe. In the autopsy of the droid, the mechanical droid goes nuts and Mando destroys it with a dark saber. The technician discovers that the Nepenthe has been corrupted and that the subparticles are nanodroids with a chain code written on them showing that it is from the former Techno-Union. The batch of Nepenthe did not arrive with the droid acquisitions, but ordered by the security office, which is illegal. Mando and Bo confront the security chief for reprogramming the nanodroids in the Nepenthe. They demand his surrender, but he threatens to push the button that would turn the droids against the humans. He reveals he was a separatist and an admirer of Count Dooku. He talks too long and Bo stuns him. The rulers are playing games. Mando and Bo bring in the security chief, who is exiled. The Duchess allows Mando and Bo to go and meet the Mandalorians, present the keys of the city to them, and knights Baby Yoda. Bo and Mando meet the Mandalorians, and Bo wants to reclaim her fleet, which Axe Wolves refuses, so she challenges him to a fight. He accepts, they fight, and she wins. Axe Wolf doesn't think Mando is a Mandalorian, because he wasn't born one, but Bo defends him that he lives as their ancestors did, and he is every bit of the Mandalorian as they are. Mando gives Bo the Darksaber, describing that on Mandalore he was defeated and he lost the Darksaber, and she rescued him, defeating who had defeated him, so the Darksaber belongs to Bo. The other Mandalorians agree. Most of this episode, up to the confrontation with the Mandalorians at the end, is a silly waste of time. I mean, the only relevant bit is the final bit, the confrontation with the Mandalorians. The rest of it could have been cut. It's a waste of time. On Coruscant, it pans down to Ella Kane in the lower levels, as she goes into an alley and meets an Imperial search droid like those in Empire Strikes Back. The droid does a facial scan and she speaks a code. Moff Gideon appears, asking for a short report because he has limited time. She reports that the pirates on Navarro have been defeated. Gideon rebuffs her by saying that she had said the New Republic wouldn't send aid. She replies that they didn't, it was the Mandalorians, those of Mando's clan and Bo-Katan, which surprises Gideon because they are sworn enemies, and that he will deal with the Mandalorians in due time. Cut to Gideon in the secret base. He walks down a corridor with troops on either side of the corridor, and then into a cloning facility, and then into the command center, which has a hello meeting of the high-ranking Imperials, the Shadow Council, and this meeting is underway. They discuss all Imperial subjects on Republic worlds, wanting rid of the New Republic, Thrawn not showing up, and showing signs of strength. Gideon wants new leadership for himself because Thrawn has not shown up. Dr. Pershing is brought up and Gideon's secret cloning as well. Gideon replies that Pershing was captured and his research lost, and that cloning research is Hux's obsession, not his. He is hiding information on cloning. He then asks for reinforcements to deal with the Mandalorians, and he suspects that the Mandalorians are planning to retake Mandalore, and Gideon wants to wipe them out, and he gets his reinforcements. Cut to Navarro rebuilding. Axe Wolf's group of Mandalorians arrive. A droid comes and warns Greef Imperials have arrived, but Greef tells them they are Mandalorians. I mean, was this explanation really necessary? I mean, it was obvious that they were Mandalorians, and we know Bo-Katan's mission to bring the Mandalorians to Navarro from earlier episodes. The landing scene goes on for a while. Bo says to Mando that the two groups have not met, and what they know of each other they hate, and will they get along? Mando replies they have to. Paz sends the children inside. Axe Wolves Mandalorians take their helmets off, and Mando's clan don't like it. The armourer then comes in and clangs some parts together and welcomes the other Mandalorians and prepares a feast. Greef talks to Mando, giving him some wine, and shows Mando a partially built IG-12. It's more of a vehicle that needs a pilot or a driver in it. IG-12 is initially controlled by one of the worm-type aliens, then Greef places Baby Yoda in it. Mando thinks Baby Yoda is too young to pilot it and tries to take Baby Yoda out of IG-12, but Baby Yoda clicks the no button numerous times. Greef thinks Baby Yoda is ready, and then Baby Yoda presses the yes button quite a few times, and then Baby Yoda prances around the room with no, 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 yes, 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 and this scene is really quite annoying. And then you cut to the market with Greef, Mando, and Baby Yoda, and the yes button is still being pressed. And they pull up to a market store, and Baby Yoda starts stuffing his face. Mando tells Baby Yoda no, he has to pay for it, which Baby Yoda ignores, and he takes more food until Mando stops him. Again, this is actually a bit annoying. Bo-Katan addresses the Mandalorians. It is time to retake Mandalore, and that magnetic interference means they can't scan the surface. But Mando could use scanners when he landed on Mandalore to track the droid, so that doesn't really make much sense. There's no consistency there. She also mentions dormant species that are now more active. She wants to move the fleet to orbit Mandalore and to send out scouts to establish a perimeter and ask for volunteers, who are reluctant at first. Then Mando and Baby Yoda, the female Mandalorian, Paz, Axe Wolves, the armourer, and others then volunteer. The fleet takes off and goes to Mandalore. The scouting party goes to land. A bit of a rough entry, and once clear, the doors open, giving the Mandalorians a look over the surface and it's a wasteland, and they drop and engage jetpacks and then they land. Bo-Katan issues orders to find the forge and only then bring down the settlers after a perimeter is secured. As they are crossing the wasteland, Mando spots something. It is a craft, which stops and asks if they have food, which Bo states they do. They recognise Bo having the symbols of the Night Owls and want her to confirm her identity, which she does, and the armourer recognises them as Mandalorians. These Mandalorians that have jetpack off and land in front of the group, and they pledge their loyalty to her. Then that night at dinner, these Mandalorians state that they were bombed twice because they refused to surrender, but Bo reveals they did surrender after the annihilation of the Mandalorian forces after the Night of 1,000 Tears, and she met with Gideon, and in exchange for laying down their arms, the remaining Mandalorians would be spared. This is how Gideon got the Darksaber. It was her only chance to save the Mandalorian people, because Gideon betrayed her and destroyed Mandalore anyway. The Mandalorians from the planet ask the armourer if they are Death Watch, and she replies, Death Watch is no longer, and was splintered into many warring factions. Bo then says they have all suffered from division and squabbling. Mandalorians were always too strong to defeat, but once their divisions began, these divisions then destroyed them, because then they splintered off into many different groups. Mando and Bo then talk. Mando has been taught that his clan were the only ones to follow the way, and that Bo was selfish, and she accepts this, worrying about uniting Mandalore. Only the Darksaber unites them. Mando states he was taught wrong, that the Mandalorians have survived previous destruction, and the Darksaber means nothing but loyalty and honour does, and that's why he follows her, and vows to continue until her song is written. The armourer takes the wounded back to the cruiser in Bo's ship. The other Mandalorians show the rest to the forge. Paz and Axe have an argument over the rules of a chess-like game they are playing. Axe calls them primitive, Paz pulls out a knife, submit or fight, and they fight. Paz has the better of the fight, but Baby Yoda stops them fighting. The armourer gets to the fleet with the wounded. Back on the planet, and the Mandalorians get to the outside of the Great Forge. They are then attacked by a monster, forcing them to abandon the craft. The Mandalorians take off with their jetpacks. Some perish while trying to escape, but most escape and go underground. They then go to what's left of the Great Forge. They then hear jetpacks, and they are not Mandalorians. They are Imperial troops wearing Beskar armour. Axe leaves to get reinforcements. Both sides take casualties. The Mandalorians enter the Imperial facility, and there is more fighting through the corridors. They then come to an opening and see another entrance to the cave where the main Imperial base is, and the gap in the roof of the cave and where the fighters can get through. Then the blast doors are closed, and Mando and a couple of Mandalorians are trapped on the other side. The other Mandalorians perish, and Mando is captured. Gideon announces new and better Dark Troopers with Beskar armour, and he wants to bring order to the galaxy. Gideon orders an attack on Bo's fleet, while there is still an element of surprise. Mando is to be taken to the briefing room. Gideon wants Bo to hand over the Darksaber, which he refuses, and thrusts it into the rear blast door, cutting a hole so the Mandalorians can escape. Gideon orders the blast doors to be opened, and he jets off. The Mandalorians start escaping, but the blast doors open and Paz holds them off. Bo wants him to come, but he refuses, closing the front blast door in front of him. He gets the better of the Imperial commandos, but then 3 Praetorian guards arrive, and they make short work of Paz, who then perishes. Paz, by holding off the Imperials and the Praetorians, allows Bo and the rest of the Mandalorians to start escaping, and the episode ends with his ultimate sacrifice, but his ultimate sacrifice helps save the other Mandalorian troops. The episode starts with Bo leading the Mandalorians back down the corridors trying to escape. She contacts Axe. I thought they couldn't use communications due to magnetic interference, but the plot has to happen. And she tells him that Gideon is alive and has ordered an attack on the fleet. Then the interference conveniently kicks in. The Imperials catch up, and the Mandalorians place charges on the walls, and then they set them off, and this blocks the corridor, preventing the Imperials from pursuing. Mando then escapes the fighting with his 2 guards, and he wins, with the help of Baby Yoda and IG-12. Mando wants to take out Gideon. Back to the main group of Mandalorians, who are contacting Mando. Again, there is no magnetic interference, and the plot has to happen, even though it was established that they couldn't communicate before, but nevertheless. Mando tells the other Mandalorians that he is going after Gideon. The Mandalorians from the planet know how to escape, and they lead the way. The fighters then take off. Gideon is informed that the fighters and bombers are off to attack the Mandalorian capital ship, and that Mando has escaped. Gideon wants to finish Mando off. Back with Mando and Baby Yoda, Mando contacts I-5, the astromech from the previous episodes, to hack into the Imperial system to find out where Gideon's command center and where Gideon himself is. The droid flies into the base and hooks in. Mando contacts I-5 again, who has access to base schematics, sending it to Mando, and he goes off to the command center. Axe gets to the ship and orders the Mandalorians to go to the dropships, and then go to the surface to reinforce Bo. He will remain on the cruiser as a distraction and deal with the Imperial fighters. The dropships and fighters pass each other. The fighters attack the cruiser, and Axe fires the AA guns at the fighters, destroying some of them. Mando going through the corridors and comes to the center, but is blocked by force fields. He contacts I-5 to deactivate one force field at a time. The first force field is deactivated and Mando deals with 2 guards. Then the other force fields and guards are dealt with in turn, individually, until the final one. I-5 is discovered by a mouse droid, and Mando is calling repeatedly to I-5 to deactivate the force field. After I-5 scares the mouse droid away, he deactivates the final force field, allowing Mando to finish off the final 2 Imperials. Mando then thanks I-5, who is then attacked by multiple mouse droids, and I-5 just simply takes off and jets away. Mando and Baby Yoda enter the cloning facility with clones of Gideon. Mando destroys them. Both group are taken to an underground cave with plants, crops and farms, which the Mandalorians of the planet have used since the Purge, and they have many such hideouts. The Mandalorian reinforcements arrive, and the Mandalorians then counterattack and start fighting the Imperials. There is a big battle between the Mandalorians and the Imperials as they jet together, firing at each other. Mando then gets to the command center. The doors then close behind him, and another door opens. Gideon is upset over the destruction of his clones. It is the best of him combined with the Force. Mando fires at him but has no impact. They then fight, and Gideon gets the better of the fight. The Praetorian guards show up and continue to beat Mando up. Baby Yoda turns up and draws them away. Mando does not want this and tries to go after them, but Gideon stops him and then closes the door. Back to the Mandalorian versus Stormtroopers fight. The Mandalorians are winning. Then back to the Praetorian guards versus Baby Yoda. They destroy IG-12, and Baby Yoda then leaps away, and they try to strike at Baby Yoda, but he keeps jumping onto the overhead platforms and keeps moving on these, jumping from one to the other to escape. Moff Gideon continues to beat Mando up. Bo interrupts Gideon beating Mando up, saving him again. She will fight Gideon while Mando will try and save Baby Yoda. The Praetorian guards break the platform and are about to strike Baby Yoda down when Mando comes in and he fights them. Baby Yoda uses the Force to help. Gideon gets the better of the fight with Bo. Back to Mando and versus the Praetorian guards. Mando strikes them, and Mando uses the Force until they perish. Then cut to the cruiser, the Mandalorian cruiser. It's on fire, and it enters the atmosphere and is heading for the base. Gideon then wins his fight with Bo, and he breaks the dark saber. Mando shoots Gideon before he can deal the final blow. Gideon says the Mandalorians are weak without the trinkets, but Bo replies they are stronger together. Axe escapes the cruiser through a window, and the cruiser is set for a collision course. This does remind me a bit of the Force Unleashed 2 Battle of Kamino, when Starkiller guides a rebel cruiser to the Imperial cloning facility. So it does have that sort of vibes, I think. The Mandalorians evacuate. Gideon shoots Mando. Bo gets in the way with her shield. The cruiser crashes into the base, destroying it, and Moff Gideon gets incinerated. Baby Yoda uses the Force to generate a shield around Bo, Mando and himself, and it protects them all from the explosion. At the pools of Mandalore, the son of Paz is initiated and baptized into the ways of the Mandalorians. Mando wants the same for Baby Yoda, but the armorer refuses because he can't speak the words. Mando then asks if his parents could give permission on his behalf, And the armourer says yes, but they don't know who his parents are and if they're still alive. Mando then adopts Baby Yoda, and he is no longer a foundling but an apprentice. The armourer asserts that Mando must take Baby Yoda off Mandalore to train him. The same was done with Mando. Then we see the Mythosaur awaken. The armourer gives Bo a torch, which he uses to reignite the forge at Mandalore. The Mandalorians clash their armour together. For Mandalore, they shout. Mando and Baby Yoda go to the New Republic base and they meet with Carson, reference Gideon. Mando offers to hunt Imperials for the Republic on a case-by-case basis. It wouldn't get approved by the Republic command, so Mando says don't tell them. Mando asks for IG-11 head as payment and he gets it. IG-11 is rebuilt and is now the Marshal of Navarro. He then cut to Grief, giving Mando a deed to the cabin. At the cabin, Mando is sitting on his chair and Baby Yoda is levitating a frog. This season is The Mandalorian's weakest season at around about 3.5 out of 10 in my opinion. Not because of Bo-Katan coming in and supposedly taking over as a Mandalorian. I'll explain my reasoning in a moment. Season 3 isn't as big a drop in my opinion because the first season was okay. It was a bare basic plot, but okay, at around 6.5 out of 10. Season 2 was about 5.5 out of 10 because in this season you start to have some bloat and some rinse repeat in the first few episodes, but improved somewhat later on. In Season 3 there is much more bloat and going on for far longer than is necessary, and the series takes a while to pick up, rather like in Season 2. There are also inconsistencies with the electromagnetic field mentioned previously, and I'll discuss it further in a moment. It was also somewhat disappointing that the arc of returning Baby Yoda to the Jedi, and the decent emotional payoff between Baby Yoda and Mando at the end of Season 2 was undone with Baby Yoda now back with Mando. Was it a fear of effect on merchandise sales? Don't know. There is also a question of what now after the Season 2. It's not surprising that they went with reclaiming Mandalore and Mando's redemption, given Episode 3 and 8 of Season 2, that Mando then joins with Bo-Katan to retake Mandalore and redeeming himself for taking off his helmet in Episode 8. I do wonder whether after the conclusion of Season 2 there was enough sort of Mando storyline, as it were, for Season 3, which is probably why they've had to have Bo-Katan come in a major way in this season. The principle of the redemption and helping Bo-Katan reclaiming Mandalore aren't necessarily bad ones, but the carrying them out of those arcs in the season wasn't good, some of which I've mentioned in the episodic breakdown, which I'll continue with. Starting with Mando's cleansing himself in the sacred water of Mandalore for redemption purposes, for taking off his helmet, is simply him taking a bath in the sacred waters. There's no trial by fire, there's no trial by combat, and there's no other challenges. And that this quest, spread over 2 episodes and the beginning and the end of the 3rd episode, is far too long and dragged out. You could have cut it down at least by 50% and you wouldn't actually lose anything. Mando is also slightly less competent in this series, having to be saved twice in the 2nd episode in quick succession, and it does feel like a bit of a downgrade. In Episode 1 there is also somewhat of an inconsistency, with Grief telling Mando that he didn't realise that Mando is on Navarro on business, when there is an earlier scene where they talk business, or the fact that Mando wants to find parts in rebuilding IG-11, which then went nowhere, only to settle for an inferior droid to scan Mandalore's atmosphere because of magnetic interference with the scanners. But the scanners still work because they can track the droid, but in a later episode the scanners don't work. So you've got a lot of that inconsistencies, and nothing is the same through the various episodes. It's basically different rules for different episodes. Also mentioned in this episode that communications don't work, but in the last episode communication does work because Bo-Katan communicates with Axe Wolves as he is jetting through the atmosphere getting to the Mandalorian ship. Again, there is no consistency. It's basically depending upon what the plot of the episode needs to happen, then happens, but contradicting what happened before. There is also Baby Yoda prancing around in the stroller. and pressing no constantly, and it was embarrassing, and it wasn't funny or cute at all. It was just embarrassing and awkward. There is a further waste of time when Mando loses track of the droid in episode 2, and he has to go and find him, only to find that he can survive in Mandalore himself. He then finds the droid to take it back to the ship, and then he sets out again, and he then wanders around quite a bit. Baby Yoda finds Mando and then goes back to the ship and flies off to get Bo-Katan. As mentioned before, communication on Mandalore doesn't work, but then miraculously it does in a later episode. Episode 3, I thought was an okay episode, but if you're taking a cold eye at it, is it strictly necessary to the overall story? Or at the very least, did you need to spend the entire episode, or most of the episode, with Dr. Pershing and the comms officer? I mean, again, could this not have been cut in half, and basically subsumed within another episode? It didn't need to carry on for as long as it did. Episode 5 is okay, but the bloat and the waste of time is when Carson has to go to Coruscant, only then to be rebuffed, before then going to meet the Mandalorians. I mean, why he couldn't just go straight to the Mandalorians in the first place? I mean, it's a whole waste of time that achieves nothing, and could have been cut out, as he can just go straight to meet Mando. Episodes 1, 2 and 4 are bloated as well. Most of episode 6 is a waste of time. I mean, the only relevant bit on episode 6 is the last 5-8 minutes at the end with the Mandalorians. Episode 7 I thought was mostly a decent episode. There are a few scenes that drag out or are unnecessary, mainly at the beginning of the episode, but once they leave Navarro, the episode then picks up. Episode 8 I thought was a decent episode as well. So again, the final 2 episodes it does pick up, it does become better, but it's a lot of time to get there. With the untimely passing of Carl Weathers, will they promote Mando to the Chief Magistrate of Navarro in the upcoming film? Don't know. Also, with Moff Gideon's demise, will Ella Kane seek revenge or go over to another Imperial faction? Again, will that be mentioned in the upcoming Mando film? Probably not, based upon what rumours have come out, but it'll be interesting. In summary, rather than turn Season 4 into a film, which is seemingly what they're doing, they should have basically turned Season 3 into a film and cut out about half or 2/3 of the series, because you really wouldn't actually lose anything. Whilst it does pick up in episodes 7 and 8, most of it, there's a lot of bloat. So again, Season 3 is very much its weakest season, which is unfortunate, for the reasons I explained earlier in the video. Well, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.